You never fight for us." She said it with the poise of someone who'd practiced in the mirror, calm, quiet, cutting. We were sitting across from each other at our kitchen table, 2 glasses of wine between us and a half-finished dinner going cold. I remember the way she folded her napkin so deliberately afterward, as if the sentence had merely been a side dish, not a blade. I didn't respond right away. Something about the way she said it, not with tears or anger but with a strange peace, stuck in my throat. It wasn't a cry for help. It was a post-mortem. The truth was I had fought for us. Maybe not loudly. Maybe not the way she wanted. But I'd shown up every day, built the life we lived brick by brick, financially, emotionally, logistically. I'd carried the quiet burdens, keeping the lights on in lean seasons, absorbing her anxiety when things didn't go her way, pretending I didn't notice how often she looked at her phone when she thought I wasn't watching. Still, I forced a small smile and asked, "What does fighting look like to you?" She shrugged. "You just never chase, never get angry, never make me feel like you go to war for this." Then she stood and poured the rest of her wine into the sink. As she walked past me, I caught a scent, something unfamiliar and faintly citrus. Not her usual perfume, new, like the rest of her lately. The comment haunted me more than I wanted to admit. Over the next week, I kept looping it in my head, trying to translate her meaning. Was it about emotional presence, passion? Was she asking for drama, conflict? I started noticing things I had trained myself to ignore. She kept her phone face down, even when we were alone. She changed passwords she used to leave written in the notepad drawer. She took showers immediately after coming home, which wasn't her habit. She'd always lingered first, kicked off her shoes, poured a glass, told me about her day. Now she disappeared like a shadow. And then there were the calendar changes. We had a shared Google Calendar. Nothing fancy, mostly reminders for house maintenance, appointments, and the occasional dinner with friends. But last Tuesday I saw something odd. Therapy 4 p.m. Midtown. I hovered over it. A recurring appointment, weekly. Only, she had never mentioned therapy. And we lived nowhere near Midtown. I told myself not to leap to conclusions. Maybe it was new, maybe she wanted space. Maybe she was genuinely working on herself. But something in me, something primal and quiet and cold, stirred. And it told me, don't confront, confirm. I began with our finances, not because I thought she was spending on someone else, but because I knew her patterns. She wasn't reckless. She was precise. If there were changes, they'd show in the details. On Thursday night, after she fell asleep on the couch with her earbuds in, another new habit, I logged into our joint account. 3 transfers caught my eye, all under $200, all sent via a secondary payment platform we rarely used, all tagged with generic emoji descriptions. They were too small to trigger alerts, too random to mean nothing. I opened my own account, quietly copied the transaction numbers, and printed them at the office the next day. That night we sat down for dinner. She was in a surprisingly affectionate mood, told me she liked the new shirt I'd bought, kissed me as she passed my wine glass. It felt like a performance. I chewed slowly, smiled when expected, but I was no longer dining with my wife. I was watching an actress recite lines she didn't believe in anymore. I spent the next week acting the part of the oblivious husband. I left the house like usual, made coffee for both of us, kissed her forehead before work. She responded with smiles, light touches, the occasional compliment. It would have fooled anyone, maybe even me 6 months ago, but I was past guessing. I was building a case. The transfers I'd found were all routed through a service that didn't list recipient names, just usernames. I dug deeper, ran each alias through public databases, cross-referenced email formats. One of them finally hit, a handle linked to a Venmo profile with a partially public feed. The name attached made my stomach turn. Liam M., my mentee. I'd brought him into my business 2 years ago, watched him go from clumsy intern to polished consultant. I'd introduced him to my networks, defended him in tense meetings, even took the fall for one of his botched proposals early on because I believed in his potential. And now he was the one receiving wine glass and theater mask emojis from my wife. I stared at the screen for what felt like an hour, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the room. The betrayal chilled me in a way fire never could. But still, I didn't move. Not yet. I needed more than implication. I needed to destroy doubt. The next day I left my office for an extended lunch and took a detour to Midtown. The address from her calendar marked therapy led to a boutique hotel with modern brass signage and oversized tinted windows. Not a counseling office, not even close. I walked the block twice, noting the cars parked nearby. No sign of her, just enough confirmation to give shape to the suspicion. I returned to work and didn't mention a word. That weekend, she asked if I wanted to go to brunch. She seemed eager, almost happy. Maybe she thought she was getting away with it. Maybe she felt lighter without guilt. Or maybe, and this hurt the most, maybe Liam made her feel something I no longer did. At brunch, she laughed at my jokes, touched my wrist, talked about redecorating the guest room. I nodded, agreed, even added a few suggestions. I was building her the illusion of safety. That night after she fell asleep again with her phone clutched like a secret, I mirrored the backup from her device onto an old iPad she'd long forgotten was synced. The photos loaded first, dozens, mostly normal, but a few were selfies taken in what looked like a hotel bathroom. Her makeup more dramatic than usual, a silk robe I'd never seen before. Her face was close to the camera, eyes a little drunk. Then I saw one, her sitting at a rooftop bar with Liam. His hand was on her thigh. They weren't trying to hide it. They weren't hiding at all. My chest didn't tighten. My fists didn't clench. Instead, I felt something break off inside me like ice calving into the sea. She had used my trust, my calendar, my silence. She had turned my calm into a shield for her secrets. And she had done it with someone I had mentored, someone who owed his success to me. I printed the photos, not because I planned to show them right away, but because paper feels heavier than pixels. Harder to lie to. The next morning, she greeted me with coffee and a kiss. I told her I had an important client dinner that night. She smiled and said, "Good, I might go to yoga." I told her to enjoy it. She smiled, walked away, and I knew she was walking toward him. By Tuesday morning, I had everything I needed: dates, receipts, photos, login trails, but I didn't move. Why? Because I wasn't interested in catching them. I wanted to corner them. I wanted them to feel the walls closing in with velvet silence until they realized there was no way out. She still kissed me goodbye that morning, humming under her breath. That's what stuck with me, how light she seemed. Like the guilt had evaporated because I hadn't yet struck back. But I had already called our estate attorney and quietly frozen any unilateral changes to the deed on our secondary property. I'd also asked my firm's compliance officer to pull metadata on Liam's outgoing files. I didn't say why, I didn't have to, he knew better than to ask. By Wednesday, I had a second shock, one worse than the affair. I got a call from our real estate manager. "Hey, just confirming, are you moving forward on the title transfer for the lake house?" "What transfer?" There was a long pause. "We received an electronic request from your joint account. All looks proper, but we need both wet signatures." "Thought you de-initiated it." I hadn't, she had. She de-used our shared e-signature access and uploaded a forged authorization document to try to move sole ownership to her name. If I hadn't placed the freeze, she might have succeeded. Now it wasn't just personal, it was legal. That night she made steak and roasted potatoes, my favorite. We ate in candlelight. She played a vinyl record and smiled when I complimented the seasoning. Halfway through dinner, I asked casually, "Did you get a chance to go to yoga yesterday?" She paused, fork halfway to her mouth. "Yeah, why?" "No reason, just asking." She didn't break stride, that scared me more than anything. I spent the next 2 days crafting the trap. Our anniversary was on Saturday. She suggested dinner with close friends, Jason and Emily, who had known us for years. I agreed. Reserved a quiet table at a rooftop place. Sent a group confirmation. Then I printed the documents. I slid the property transfer request into a crisp envelope. Next to it, copies of the payments to Liam, the hotel booking under her email alias, the backup photos she'd forgotten were synced. On the back of the last sheet, I wrote one sentence: "You said I never fight for us. I just stopped fighting for you." Saturday came. She wore a navy dress, subtle jewelry, and perfume I'd never smelled before. It wasn't for me. At the restaurant, we laughed, drank wine, and made toasts. Jason mentioned a ski trip we should all plan. Emily complimented her dress, then I raised my glass. "To second chances," I said. She smiled, nodded, lifted her glass, and that's when I handed her the envelope. She opened it slowly, probably expecting a gift card or dinner receipt. What she found instead turned her hands to stone. Her smile collapsed mid-sentence. Emily's brow furrowed. Jason leaned forward. "What's that?" Emily asked softly. My wife said nothing. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then she stood and ran toward the bathroom, envelope still in hand. I didn't follow. I finished my wine. Jason stared at me like I just detonated a mine under his dinner. I looked him in the eye. "Did you know?" He shook his head. Too quickly. I didn't press. I rode the elevator down alone. I stepped into the night, letting the city noise swallow me whole. Above me, she was either crying or calling him. Either way, I no longer cared. She didn't come home that night. I didn't text her, didn't call. I just made a whiskey, turned on the security cameras, and watched the front door stay empty for hours. At 3:12 a.m., I checked the footage one last time before bed. Still nothing. In the morning, her phone was offline. Her location, shared since our honeymoon, was suddenly disabled. She was gone, at least for now. But my focus had shifted. The lake house fraud changed everything. That move meant premeditation. It meant she wasn't just having an affair, she was planning an escape. One with assets tucked safely in her corner and stories likely pre-spun for court, friends, and therapists. And that's when I realized something else. She was preparing to play the victim. I called my attorney and initiated an emergency protective hold on all joint properties. Not because I was afraid she'd take something, but because I knew she already tried. Then I called Liam's employer. Not directly, through an anonymous report. I laid out point by point the misuse of company resources, the leaked client timelines, which I now had proof he'd forwarded to an unapproved email, and the conflict of interest involving a married business partner's spouse. Corporate ran with it instantly. They launched an internal probe within 48 hours. He was placed on immediate leave, and she still hadn't come home. Monday morning, I got the text. "We need to talk. Can we meet somewhere neutral?" I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I forwarded the message to my lawyer and confirmed that she'd already consulted someone about legal separation. Apparently, she had asked about custody implications 2 weeks prior. That sealed it. She had been planning this behind my back, building a paper trail, shifting narratives, preparing her exit like a strategist. She thought I wouldn't notice. She thought I'd stay passive. She miscalculated. We met at a small park near the river. She looked tired, pale. Her eyes scanned mine like she wasn't sure who she'd find inside. "I didn't want it to go this way," she started. I said nothing. I was lost. I felt like I didn't matter to you anymore. And then, "Liam, don't," I said quietly. "Don't insult both of us." She stopped, looked down. "I never meant to hurt you." "You forged my signature on a property transfer," I replied. "You transferred money from our joint account to someone I mentored. You used our calendar to hide hotel appointments and told our friends I was emotionally distant so no one would question you." Tears welled up. "I didn't want to lose everything." "You already did." I stood. Before I walked away, I said one last thing. "You said I never fight for us. That's not true. I just stopped fighting for someone who already surrendered." That evening, Emily called. "She told me everything," she said. Well, her version. "And what did that sound like?" "That she was confused, that you were cold, that Liam made her feel seen." I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was familiar. "She's not confused, Emily, she's calculating. She wants to talk to you again. She already said everything." That week, the fallout deepened. Liam's leave turned into termination. My wife's lawyer backed out when presented with forged documentation. And our mutual friends began to fracture, half stepping away quietly, the other half reaching out with cautious apologies. She wasn't just losing a marriage, she was losing her version of the story. By Thursday, her silence returned, not the defensive kind, but the panicked one. The kind that comes when you realize your fallback plan has caved in and you're standing on the rubble. I wasn't surprised when Jason called me that night. He rarely initiated. His tone was cautious. "She's been staying with Liam," he said. I stayed quiet. Well, he's not handling it great. Apparently, he didn't think this would all go public. Of course he didn't. He treated it like a casual conquest, an ego boost wrapped in someone else's wife. He never expected it to become a scandal, especially not one that would cost him his job and send corporate sniffing through his digital trash. "And now?" I asked. "He dumped her." I almost laughed. Not out of pettiness, out of clarity. That was her second betrayal. Not just the affair, but betting everything on a man who didn't even have the spine to stand next to her when things got ugly. The next morning, I checked our joint email inbox and found something telling. 2 rejection letters from potential attorneys she'd contacted. Both cited conflict of interest. That meant they'd likely spoken to mine first, or reviewed her actions and walked away. Her isolation was accelerating. And just as swiftly, my world was stabilizing. I'd closed down our secondary accounts, redirected auto payments, and updated all access points on our financial platforms. Every account was now double authenticated and logged. Every trace of joint ownership was under legal freeze. I didn't scream. I didn't tear the world apart. I made sure everything that mattered was out of her reach. Then came the second twist. I was reviewing older shared folders on our cloud drive, backups, tax files, old mortgage statements. Buried in a subfolder mislabeled Garden Ideas were documents I hadn't seen before. One was a draft letter to a family court mediator. Another was an unsigned declaration accusing me of emotional abandonment and suggesting that I was controlling with money. It was the kind of fabricated narrative I'd seen used as legal leverage in ugly separations, designed to win sympathy, skew custody decisions, or tilt asset divisions. She hadn't just cheated. She had twisted sympathy into strategy. I stared at the documents for a long time, my hands still. She hadn't submitted them yet, but she had been ready to. That was when the final piece of hope in me broke, not because she lied, but because she prepared to paint me as the villain after already stabbing me in the back. I met with my attorney again the next day and laid everything out: the draft declaration, the forged signature, the hotel receipts, the financial trail. He looked at me, jaw tight. "She wasn't just leaving," he said. "She was preparing to destroy your foundation on the way out." "I know. Are you ready for what happens next?" "I've been ready since she told me I didn't fight." Later that week, I passed her on the street. She didn't see me. She was walking fast, alone, dressed in clothes that looked like she'd slept in them. The confidence was gone, the careful posture replaced by something heavy and uncertain, and I felt nothing. Not hate, not satisfaction, just distance. 2 weeks passed. The divorce papers were ready. My lawyer had them drafted with surgical precision, asset protection locked, misappropriation documented, and fraud marked clearly in the filing. She would get a portion of what the law required, not a penny more. I had stopped reacting to her now. Her attempts at contact became sporadic, uncertain. Texts like, "Can we meet to talk? I didn't know it would go this far. Please, just let's start over." She wasn't apologizing. She was grasping. Her version of fighting was flailing now that the narrative had collapsed around her. And then came the call from her employer. A formal investigation had begun, not into her personal life, but into the integrity of a presentation she and Liam had jointly given 6 months ago. My name was on it as a secondary consultant. I hadn't even seen the final version before it was pitched to a client. Apparently, sections of the financial data had been altered to favor a bid from a company Liam had prior ties to, a company now under federal review for procurement fraud. Suddenly, it wasn't just betrayal and stolen property. It was potential legal exposure. They wanted to know what I knew. I showed them emails, timestamps, my original drafts. I was cleared within hours. She wasn't. A week later, I received a package at my office. No return address. Inside, a single envelope with my name written in her handwriting. No letter, just a photo. It was from our 3rd anniversary. We were at the coast, wind tearing at her scarf, both of us laughing as I tried to light a fire pit. On the back, she'd written, "You used to look at me like I was the only thing that mattered. I didn't know how to tell you when I stopped feeling like that person." I stared at it for a long time, not because it softened anything, but because it proved what I'd always feared. She had drifted long before Liam, long before the property transfer, long before she accused me of not fighting. She had left in spirit months before she ever packed a bag. Jason and Emily tried to stay neutral, but I could see the cracks forming. Emily told me quietly over lunch, "She's different now, like she can't believe this is real." "She believed the lie too long," I said. "Now the truth feels like fiction." The legal process dragged. Her lawyer tried to push for mediation. Mine refused. We weren't negotiating truth. The court filings included everything: digital forensics, bank records, property docs, the forged signature, and the attempted concealment of financial transactions. It wasn't just emotional collapse now. It was reputational damage, and it was permanent. I didn't celebrate, I didn't toast. I just changed the locks, packed her remaining things, and left them with a courier. She never came to get them. The decree came through on a Thursday. No drama, no courtroom standoff. Just an email with attached documents and a note from my attorney. Finalized. She signed yesterday. I stared at the screen for a while. That was it. 7 years condensed into a file folder and a state seal. Not with fire or fury, but with the quiet slam of a door no one would reopen. The fallout continued long after. Her reputation, once bulletproof in her industry, was now wrapped in whispers. The investigation into the fraudulent data Liam submitted revealed her involvement in rerouting communications and suppressing risk reports. She wasn't charged, but she was let go, quietly, permanently. No company wanted the risk. The friends who hadn't already pulled away were now keeping her at arm's length. They weren't angry, they were just done. Betrayal had a way of making people uncomfortable. It reminded them of what they feared could happen to them. So they distanced themselves and forgot how often they'd laughed in our home. Jason called once more after everything settled, just once. She says she thought you'd chase her. I almost laughed. She mistook restraint for weakness. She says she still dreams about that night at the restaurant, the envelope. So do I said, but not the way she thinks. He didn't call again. The last time I saw her, it was accidental. I was at a local market picking up coffee beans when I turned and saw her across the aisle. She looked thinner, tired. Her shoulders were drawn up like she was bracing for something. When our eyes met, she froze. I didn't wave, didn't nod. I just held her gaze long enough for her to know that I saw her, and that whatever she'd hoped I'd still carry for her was gone. Not hate, not love, just nothing. Some nights I still hear her words, "You never fight for us." I wonder if she ever understood what I gave up by not exploding. What it cost me to fight silently, to endure the charade while I built a wall of evidence around the truth. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I didn't lash out, but I fought. I fought for clarity, for dignity, for the right to walk away without the world thinking I'd been the villain in someone else's scripted downfall. And when the smoke cleared, I stood. Scarred, yes, but standing. She fought for escape and ended up waging war against herself.